Most people ruin beef ribs in the first 5 minutes, before they even light the fire. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly why and exactly how to fix it. Welcome to the Meat Authority. Today, we're going deep into one of the most legendary pieces of meat in American barbecue, the Central Texas beef rib. We're talking a bone the size of your forearm, draped in a black pepper crust so thick it crackles when you bite through it, with meat so tender and rich it practically dissolves on your tongue. We're going to cover how to pick the right ribs, how to set up your cook for maximum smoke penetration, the low and slow method that makes them buttery soft, and a critical timing secret that most backyard cooks never hear about. Stick around to the end, because the final tip alone could completely transform your next cook. First, let's talk about the cut itself, because this is where most people make their first mistake, and it's one nobody really warns you about. When you walk into a butcher shop and ask for beef ribs, you might get 3 completely different things depending on where you're standing. There are short ribs, back ribs, and plate ribs, and if you grab the wrong one, no amount of smoke or seasoning is going to save you. Central Texas style is all about the plate rib. This is the big one. It comes from the lower chest of the cow, usually sold as a 3-bone rack, and each bone can weigh well over a pound on its own. The fat-to-meat ratio on a plate rib is extraordinary. We're talking deep intramuscular marbling that, when cooked low and slow, renders down into something almost obscenely silky. Back ribs, by contrast, look similar, but have most of the meat between the bones rather than on top, because that meat gets sold off as ribeye. They'll still taste good, but they'll never give you that dramatic, towering bite that makes Central Texas beef ribs famous. So before you do anything else, ask your butcher specifically for beef plate ribs, also called USDA beef short plate ribs, section 123A if you really want to get technical. Now here's something that surprised me the first time I learned it from a pitmaster in Lockhart. He told me that the rub on a Central Texas rib is almost insultingly simple, and yet it took him years to stop overthinking it. We'll come back to exactly how he applies it in a second, because the technique matters just as much as the ingredients. The rub for a classic Central Texas beef rib is kosher salt and coarse black pepper. That's it, a 50-50 ratio by volume, applied aggressively, and I mean aggressively, to every surface of the meat. We're not talking a light dusting, we're talking a full crust. The pepper creates a bark that seals in moisture and carries smoke flavor into the outer layer of meat. The salt draws out a small amount of surface moisture, which then gets reabsorbed, pulling the salt deeper into the muscle. But here's the key move that pitmaster taught me. Apply your rub at least an hour before the cook, ideally the night before. Let those ribs sit uncovered in the fridge overnight. The surface dries out, and when that dry surface hits your hot smoker, it forms a bark so beautiful it looks almost lacquered. This is the detail most home cooks skip, and it makes a noticeable difference. So let's talk fire and smoke, because this is where Central Texas style becomes its own religion. The traditional fuel of choice is post oak, a dense, slow-burning hardwood that produces a clean, medium-intensity smoke with just a hint of sweetness. It's not as aggressive as mesquite, not as fruity as cherry, and it doesn't overpower the beef the way hickory sometimes can. If you can't find post oak in your area, white oak is a solid substitute. Avoid anything pre-soaked. Wet wood produces dirty steam, not clean smoke, and it'll give your ribs a bitter, acrid flavor instead of that deep amber smoke ring you're chasing. Your target temperature is 250 to 265 degrees Fahrenheit in your smoker, no higher. This is the low and slow sweet spot for beef plate ribs. You want enough heat to break down the collagen. That's the tough connective tissue woven through the meat, without drying out the muscle fibers before that breakdown happens. Collagen begins converting to gelatin around 160 degrees internal temperature in the meat, but it takes sustained time at that temperature to fully melt. That gelatin is what makes your rib feel buttery. Rush it with high heat and you get tight, chewy meat instead. Be patient. Now here's the open question I want you to keep in your head for the next couple minutes. How do you actually know when a beef rib is done? Because internal temperature alone will mislead you. I'll tell you exactly what to look for, and it's not what most people expect. At 250 degrees, a 3-bone rack of beef plate ribs is going to need somewhere between 8 and 10 hours. Plan for it. This is not a quick weekend cook. This is a commitment, and it rewards you accordingly. Around the 4 to 5 hour mark, you'll likely hit what's called the stall. The internal temperature of the meat plateaus, sometimes for 2 or 3 hours, while the surface moisture evaporates and cools the meat at the same rate it's gaining heat. First-timers panic here and crank the heat. Don't. Trust the process. The stall is actually doing you a favor. It's a low-temperature braise happening inside the muscle itself. Let it lie. Here's your butcher's secret for today. Some pitmasters wrap their ribs in butcher paper, never foil, around the stall to push through it faster while still allowing some moisture to escape.
Foil traps too much steam and can soften the bark you worked hard to build overnight. Butcher paper breathes just enough.
If you wrap, do it when the bark looks set and deeply colored, usually around the 6-hour mark. If you don't wrap, your bark will be more intense, your cook will be longer. Both are valid. Choose your adventure. Now, about knowing when they're done. Internal temperature will read somewhere between 200 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit when they're getting close. But the real test, the one the Lockhart pitmaster swore by, is the probe test. Slide a metal skewer, or the probe of your thermometer, into the thickest part of the meat between the bones. When it slides in with zero resistance, like you're pushing into room temperature butter, the ribs are done. That sensation of no resistance is your gelatin fully developed, your collagen fully converted. Temperature is a guide. Texture is the truth. Pull those ribs off the smoker and let them rest, minimum 30 minutes, ideally 45. The muscle fibers need time to relax and reabsorb the juices that have been driven toward the center during cooking. Cut into them too early and you'll see a flood of liquid on your cutting board. Wait, and every bite will be juicy, rich, and deeply smoky. When you finally slice between those bones and lift that first rib free, hold it up. Look at that smoke ring, that pink band just under the crust that tells you the smoke went deep. Bite in. You'll get the crack of the bark first, then a yielding, almost gelatinous tenderness, then a flood of beefy, smoky, fatty richness that tastes like the best version of every barbecue memory you've ever had. Central Texas beef ribs are not complicated. They are patient. They reward people who slow down, trust the fire, and let time do the work. The biggest mistake most people make isn't the rub or the wood or the temperature. It's not giving it enough time. And now you know exactly how much time it needs and what to look for when it's ready. Drop your favorite thing to smoke in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video helped you, hit subscribe so you never miss a cook. And next time we're heading somewhere in the American South that's doing something to pork shoulder that I genuinely did not expect. You are not going to want to miss it.